We will walk you through the agenda for today. We will go through the introduction of the session. We will then provide a demo of the return process and summarize the key takeaways from the session. At the end, there will be a short Q&A session. This feature will be available at the end of the session at the Q&A, and the question will be limited to corporate tax return process. With this, I hand over to my colleague Ms. Roda Al-Mheri to walk you through the webinar.
Thank you so much, Hassa, for taking us through today's agenda, and good morning, everyone. We will start first with the introduction of today's session. As you may know, this session is designed to walk you through the corporate tax return requirements of the taxable person through Emirate Tax portal. And you need to know that the tax return must be submitted by a taxable person or another person who has the right to do so on behalf of the taxable person, where this includes a tax agent or legal representative, and also the parent company of the tax group. A tax return must also be completed and filed online through Emirate Tax within 9 months of the end of the tax period. And a tax return is comprised of 9 main steps or parts that we will go through in few minutes, where it will allow you and allow the taxable person to report their taxable income, including any relevant adjustment such as exemptions and reliefs claimed. As mentioned by Hassa, there will be a question and answer session at the end of the webinar to answer any questions related and limited to corporate tax return. Kindly add your questions in the Q&A box only, where we will be answering the questions from the Q&A box and refrain from utilizing the chat box. Moving to the key points to take into consideration before filing. Starting with the taxpayer details, kindly do not file your return if the following is incorrect, either entity type or tax period. Starting with the taxpayer details, do not file your return if the following is incorrect, starting with the entity type or tax period. For example, for the entity type, if you're registered as a natural person instead of a juridical person, you need to apply an Emirate Tax to change your entity type or tax period first if needed, and only file your return once the FTA has updated the entity type or tax period. Moving to the small business relief. If taxpayers with revenue equal to or less than 3 million dirhams qualify to claim small business relief, the corporate tax return is simplified where the small business relief is elected. No corporate tax is payable where small business relief is elected, and you do not need to attach your financial statements, but must be able to prove your revenue when requested by the FTA. And kindly refer to the Corporate Tax Guide on Small Business Relief for more details and guidance. Moving to the elections. There are certain elections that are irrevocable. Please pay careful consideration to the current and future tax consequences of each election before you make a decision. These irrevocable elections are realization basis, transactional rules, and transfers within a qualifying group with the financial statements and accounting. Moving to the financial statements and accounting, all taxpayers, excluding small business reliefs, need to attach their financial statements to the corporate tax return, where taxpayers with revenue of not more than 3 million dirhams in a tax period can use the cash basis of accounting. And for the taxpayers with revenue of more than 3 million dirhams in the tax period will be required to prepare their financial statements in terms of International Financial Reporting Standards, IFRS, or IFRS for SMEs if applicable, where the financial statements must be signed and stamped and attached to the tax return. Kindly note, taxpayers also need to consider whether they should engage accountants with appropriate experience to assist them with the preparation of the financial statements. Moving to the nil returns. If you earned no revenue during the tax period, you can elect the small business relief, in which case the return is simplified. If you do not elect for small business relief, you need to complete the normal corporate tax return, where amounts are nil, and you need to populate nil in the relevant fields. Moving to free zones. Not all free zones companies are qualifying free zone persons, so kindly note that qualifying free zone persons are taxed at a rate of 0% on their qualifying income only. Please refer to the corporate tax law and the corporate tax guide on free zone persons and the ministerial in addition to the cabinet decision for more information. Also, qualifying free zone persons may elect to subject to the normal corporate tax regime. With this, we will start now the corporate tax return demonstration, where we will go through all the main steps one by one. Starting by entering to the Emira Tax portal, where you will need to log in by entering your credentials such as the email address and the password, along with the security code showing on your screens. Once you're logged in, you will need to click on the taxable person profile from the dashboard that you would like to proceed with. Moving to, you'll click on view, and then you will click on corporate tax filings, where it says corporate tax filings and refunds, and you will click on view all from the type. You will move to the actions where it says file, and you will click on file to start filing the corporate tax return. You will read the terms and conditions, and after reading it carefully, you will start the process. So mainly the process is 9 main steps, or starting with 8 main steps were requested in the steps. If you are qualifying free zone persons, these steps will dynamically be changed in the Emira Tax portal. So starting with the first step, which will be the taxpayer details, moving with the second step, which will be the elections, the accounting standards, the accounting adjustments and exempt income, reliefs, other adjustment, tax liability and tax credits, and lastly, reviewing and declaring that all the given information is accurate. Moving to this highlighted tile, where this section will be displayed for you on all steps, where it will show you the filing period details based on the selected corporate tax return, such as the corporate tax return period, the corporate tax return due date, and the corporate tax year end. So kindly make sure before proceeding that all the corporate tax period is correct. The taxpayer details section will be pre-populated with your details from your registration application. Kindly note that for the legal type, please emphasize that the importance of selecting the correct legal type during the return filing in this section. If this taxpayers their legal type is incorrect, you need to apply for a change for entity type as we've mentioned earlier, and once it's approved, you proceed with your corporate tax return. Moving to the address details, where it will be pre-populated with your registration application, and you will just review it before proceeding. So moving to the moving to if the information is correct, as we've mentioned, you will answer the question either with yes or no, and if the information is incorrect, you will be promoted to submit an application to amend the registration. And as mentioned, once the application is approved, you can proceed with your corporate tax return. Moving to the taxable person information, you can update the taxable information if applicable, and you will proceed to the unincorporated partnership details if required. Next, you can update the business activity details as well. And before moving to the free zones person, we would like to let you know that the filing a return is mandatory regardless of their revenue amount or profit loss status. So this applies for all registered taxpayers. Some elections are irrevocable, so it's important to understand what is the consequences of each election before making a choice. Please read the guide and seek tax advice, as the decisions will affect your future returns. So please make sure before answering the question to proceed to the next step, where the system will automatically will be in the dynamic that will shows more steps for the free zones person. So let's assume that we click that we're a free zones person. We will move to a new request, which will be the free zone details will appear. So we're now in the free zone section, where it will allows us to update the free zone details relevant to the taxpayer. You can update the revenue schedule details if applicable. You can complete the updates of the revenue schedule, where the total revenue for the de minimis requirements will be auto-calculated to you. You can update as well the non-qualifying revenue if applicable, and the same will be for the total non-qualifying revenue, which will be auto-calculated to you. You cannot update the de minimis calculation, where it will be appearing on your page, and you can update the qualifying revenue details where highlighted. Moving to the substance free zones details, you may update it if applicable to you, and you will move to the free zone confirmations, where you can update the details if applicable. You can update the additional information as well by entering all the required information, and you will move at the end to add any additional information if needed. Once done, you will click on next step, and you will move to the third step, which will be the elections. The elections section allows you to make the elections relevant to you. So kindly note that there are some irrevocable elections that must be done in the first tax return, and taxpayers will not be able to change it in the future returns. So you need to ensure that you understand the future consequences of each election. You will start first with the realization basis, where you can elect to apply in this section, and kindly note you need to know that it's important that your financial statements must be signed and stamped. You will move to the transactional rules, and then next you will have the small business relief. You can make the election to apply for the small business relief, where you are only entitled to this relief if your revenue is less than 3 million dirhams or less. And if you're entitled for the same, you should answer with either yes or no to the question of, is the taxable person a member of multinational enterprises groups? So you can make an election for relief transfers within qualifying group if applicable to you, and you will move to the business restructuring transactions as well. You can make an election to exempt the foreign permanent establishment income, And once answered carefully, you will proceed to the next step, which will be the accounting schedule. This section is divided into three parts: the statement of profit or loss, comprehensive income, and statement of financial positions. You can update the details for each of this if applicable to you. And kindly note that all numeric values entered should be as positive, where the system will determine where positive or negative adjustment will be applied in the tax calculation depending on the nature of the field. So let's start first with operating your revenue details by adding it carefully where the gross profit or loss will be auto-calculated to you. You can update your interest expense or income details if applicable as well, and the net interest expense or income will be auto-calculated to you. Moving to the net losses or gains on disposable of assets, it will be as well auto-calculated to you based on the numeric values you've entered. Moving as well to the net losses gains on foreign exchange, you can update it if needed. You can update as well the expense of other income details, where the expense net of other income will be auto-calculated to you. You will view the net profit or loss in dirhams, which will be auto-calculated to you based on the details entered by you for the profit or loss section above. You can update the statement of other comprehensive income details if applicable as well. And next, the total comprehensive income for the year should be auto-calculated and appearing on your screens based on all the entered values you've entered above. You can update the assets details if applicable to you in this section of the statements of financial positions, and you may update the non-current assets details if applicable, where the total non-current assets and total assets should be auto-calculated. You can update the liability details if applicable, and the total liabilities will appear to you based on the numeric values you've entered. And you may update the equity details if applicable, where the total equity should be auto-calculated on your screens. The total equity and liabilities are auto-calculated based on the details you've entered above in this highlighted section. You will move by entering the total number of employees, and then for the audit section you can update if applicable, moving to the shareholder, where you may click on add shareholder to add any shareholder details if applicable. Once done, you will click on next step and you will proceed to the fifth step, which should be the accounting adjustments and exempt income, where this section will allow you to update the accounting income for adjustment, such as the provisions adjustments and the realization basis adjustments. You can update the exempt income section by providing all your details and all your details of the accounting income. So let's start first with the adding your accounting income details, moving to continuing with updating the accounting income details by answering the questions if applicable to you and entering all the needed information. You can update the realization basis adjustment in this section if applicable as well. And next you will move to continue by updating the information related to the same. You can update as well the transactional adjustment details by answering the questions either with yes or no, and you will move by updating the same for the transactional adjustment details. Moving to the exempt income, you can update the exempt income details if applicable. And you will continue with updating the exempt income details where needed. So once you've entered your exempt income details, you will move by continuing to the foreign permanent establishment income, where you may update this section if applicable. And once answered all questions and entered all required fields carefully, you will click to next step, which will be the sixth step of the reliefs. This section will allow you to include the adjustment which are arising from reliefs claimed, including transfers within a qualifying group or business restructuring relief where applicable. And as we've mentioned, all numeric values should be entered in positive. You can update the details of relief relating to transfers within qualifying group if applicable to you, and you will continue by updating the section of the transfers within qualifying group. You will move to updating the business restructuring relief by answering the questions if applicable or needed, and you will as well need to update the details of the relief relating to the business restructuring group if applicable to you. Once you've answered and entered all the required fields correctly, you will proceed to the next step, which should be the other adjustments. So once you're in the seventh step of the other adjustments, it will allow you to make the adjustment for non-deductible expenditure, adjustment for interest income or expenditure, transactions with related parties and connected persons if applicable to you. And as we've mentioned in the previous steps, all numeric values should be in positive, where the system will determine where needed to be positive or negative. So you will enter your details first of the adjustments for non-deductible expenditure if applicable, and you will move by adding description for the adjustments for non-deductible expenditure. You will answer the questions by either yes or no, and if yes, you will enter the adjustments for interest income or expenditure details if applicable by clicking Enter Capping Schedule. Once you've entered the capping schedule, you will enter the interest of the capping schedule details where applicable, where the non-deductible net interest expenditure brought forward should be auto-calculated to you on your screens. So you will have the chance either to cancel and go back or save and go back. So moving back to the step, we will have the adjustments for interest income or expenditure details where you will need to add it if applicable to you, and you will need to do the same by adding the transactions with related parties and connected persons if applicable to you by clicking on related party transaction schedule. So once you click on it, you will have the first section, which should be the gross income received from the related parties. You will go to the plus button where it says add new item to add the gross income received from the related parties. You will enter the gross income received from the related parties information if applicable to you, and next you will click on add and you will go back. You can view the details here that you have entered, and you will move to the expenditure paid to related parties next to the tile of the related party transaction schedule. So you will go to add new item by clicking on it, and you will enter the expenditure paid related parties details where applicable to you. Once you've entered the details, you will click on add, and you can view the details that you have entered in this section. You may click on the tile where it says summary table as well to view the summary table that you cannot make any amendments on this section, where you may review it only and save and go back to the main step. So moving back to the additions as a result of adjustments to transactions which were not at arm's length details, which should be auto-calculated to you based on the values you've entered, you may click on Connected Person Schedule to add your new item of the Connected Person Schedule. You will enter their details where applicable to you in this page, and you will click on Add and Go Back, where you may view the details here and go back to the main step. Moving to the transactions with related parties and connected persons, which should be added if needed. And you will as well enter the adjustments for income and expenditure derived from a qualifying investment fund, if applicable. You will enter the details of other adjustments as well. And once done, you will click on Next Step. Moving to the 8th step, which should be the tax liability and tax credits sections, which will displays your final tax liability. The taxable income details should be auto-calculated as a result of these schedules and will be grayed out to you. You may review it only. Moving to the tax losses, where you can update this section by clicking on Tax Losses Schedule. Once you clicked on Tax Losses Schedule, you will proceed to the section where the tax losses schedules. You cannot make any amendments to the grey out field section, but you will move to clicking to the tax losses claimed from other taxable persons and click on Add New Item. By clicking on Add New Item, you will add tax losses claimed from other taxable persons. You will enter the tax losses claimed from other taxable persons details where applicable to you, and you will click on Add and Go Back, where you can view the details that you have entered here. You will click on the tax losses transferred to other taxable persons, and by clicking on Add New Item to add the tax losses transferred to the other taxable persons, you will enter the details required fields where needed, and you will click on Add and go back to the main page. So we will save this section and we will go back to the main page, where you will need to complete by entering the tax losses which should be pre-populated to you. You will move to the tax calculation and tax credits details as well should be auto-calculated to you based on the information provided. You will move by clicking to tax credit schedule, and you will add a new item to the tax credit schedule. You will enter the required fields, and once completed carefully, you will click on Add and view this section where you can view the details that you have entered here and review them. You can click on Save and go back to the main step, which will be the tax calculation and tax credits auto-calculated to you. You can update the estimated provisional figures included in the corporate tax return. And once completed carefully, you will upload the additional attachments where needed to you. After completing all mandatory fields, you will click on Next Step to save and proceed to the next step, which should be the last step of reviewing and declaring all your given information. After carefully reviewing all the information entered on the corporate tax return, kindly click on the checkbox to declare that the correctness of the information provided in the corporate tax return is to the best of your knowledge and belief and accurate. You will click on Yes to confirm, and your return has been submitted successfully to the FTA. You can check the status of your corporate tax return based on the application number. So you need to have your reference number once the corporate tax return has been submitted from your dashboard. So we're done with the corporate tax return process and moving to the payment process of the corporate tax return. You will need to enter the Emirate Tax portal from the beginning, and you'll click on the taxable person profile you would like to proceed with. You will go where the section says corporate tax, and next you will click on my payments. You will select the select and pay blue box on the total corporate tax payment due tile, and you can find your returns liability in this page where you may review it before paying the amount. You may click on proceed to the payment and choose the preferred payment method where corporate tax can be paid either by bank transfers or credit card. You will answer the question with yes to confirm, and you will enter the payment details. Once completed, you'll click on Pay, and you may download the PDF copy of the acknowledgement screen and go back to the dashboard to navigate you back to the taxable person account. So once you go to the account where it says My Payment, you can view the total outstanding amount and the overdue amount once you've paid it to know how much is left you to be paid. With this, we move to the key takeaways before the Q&A session, where we summarize some of the key points that you need to know once you do your corporate tax return. As you may know, for the registration, taxpayers must ensure that they are registered for corporate tax and should update, if required, your legal entity type and other required data to ensure it's correct within the tax period. Taxpayers need to check and make sure that the tax period, specifically the first tax period appearing in the registration information, is correct. And as we've mentioned in the financial statements and accounting methods, all taxpayers need to prepare and upload their financial statements along with the corporate tax return. Taxpayers with revenue of not more than 3 million dirhams in a tax period can use the cash basis of accounting, where taxpayers with revenue of more than 3 million dirhams in the tax period will be required to prepare their accounts as per the IFRS standards or IFRS for SMEs if applicable, where the qualifying free zone persons and taxpayers with the revenue less than 50 million dirhams in the tax period need to get their financial statements audited. You need to consider as well if you need to engage accountants with the appropriate experience. Moving to the auditors, and when do you need to engage an auditor? Taxpayers which needs to engage auditors should do so before the year end to ensure that the auditors are appropriately involved in the year-end activities such as including but not limited to stock take and cash count. Moving to the record keeping, and what information do you need to keep? So taxpayers need to make sure that they have the necessary records and information to support the corporate tax return and any applications or elections they would like to make. These records must be retained as per the requirement of the corporate tax law. Moving to the small business relief, and if the question was, am I eligible to elect for the small business relief? So taxpayers with revenue of not more than 3 million dirhams should consider if they are eligible for the small business relief election and determine if they wish to claim the relief. Where other elections, and if you are eligible for other elections, Taxpayers need to check whether they are eligible to make other elections as part of the return filing, which this includes the elections to record gains and losses on a realization basis, exclude income from foreign permanent establishment when determining taxable income, apply transactional rules, apply business restructuring relief, apply transfer within qualifying group relief, and finally be subject to tax at the standard rates instead of the rates applicable to a qualifying free zone persons. Moving to the tax residency status, where if you are a resident in the UAE, taxpayers need to understand that their tax residence status and consider the impact of any applicable double taxation treats on their residence status. This is relevant for completing the corporate tax return. And if you are eligible to file an application to be an exempt person, certain exempt persons will be required to file an application with the FTA within 60 days of the end of their tax period. Moving to the additional support, you need to consider whether you need any additional specialist support, as an example from tax agents or specialists to help with preparing the corporate tax return, requesting clarification, or any other activities. Moving to the auditors. And if audited financial statements are required, if you have revenue in excess of 50 million dirhams in the relevant tax period, and if you are a qualifying free zone person, and if the auditor must be registered auditor. Moving to the related parties and connected persons. The same person can be a related party and a connected person. So if in this case you need to answer yes to both questions in the Emirate tax, whether you had any transactions with related parties or connected persons. However, you only need to complete the details of transaction under one of these categories, not under both of them. And you need to know that all transactions with related parties and connected persons must be at arm's length. If this is not in the case, the taxable person needs to make adjustment in its return to reflect the arm's length amount. Moving to the record keeping, where you need to ensure that you have all the necessary records and information to support your corporate tax return, where these records must be retained for a period of 7 years from the end of the tax period. And finally, for the income earned outside the UAE, if you are a tax resident of the UAE, you need to include your worldwide income in your return, not only the income from UAE sources. And with this, I hand over back to my colleague Hissa Al-Banna.
Thank you, Rhoda, for providing clear instructions on how to apply for corporate tax return. Before moving to the Q&A session, please follow us on our social media channels to stay updated on our upcoming workshops and access our services. Please note that we are answering the Q&A, the questions in the Q&A chat box as much as we can, and we will take the common questions and will answer them now. And now we will leave the QR code of the survey on the screen. Your participation is greatly appreciated. To learn more about your experience in today's session, please choose Corporate Tax Journey in question 5, and the survey link will be provided in the chat box. Also, the Q&A feature will be available shortly on your screen. We will give you a few minutes to complete the survey. Then we will answer few of the common questions verbally. Thank you. Please note that we are not answering any questions are not about CT return. Please note anyone is advertising himself will be opt out from the session. Thank you to everyone for participating in this survey. We will now move to the Q&A session. First question is, in 2024, a natural person started a new business through an LLC where he owns 100% of the capital, single owner LLC. Who should register?
Thank you, Hissa, for the
Oh, you're
question.
doing something?
The LLC is a taxable person who is a juridical person and have a separate legal personality
If you
from
want,
its
we can
owner.
continue that.
Then it
Later on, we
should
can discuss.
register for the corporate tax purposes.
No
Can
problem,
I
no
file
problem.
one
Yeah.
CT
Anyway,
return for all
sorry,
companies I
Kirtana,
own?
you carry on, Aju,
If the
with the other
companies
call.
meet the requirements to
You
form
can
a
leave.
tax
Yeah.
group and their application to form a tax group is approved, they can file a single UAE corporate tax covering a corporate tax return covering all the members of the tax group. Where companies cannot form a tax group, they will each be required to file a corporate tax return on standalone basis.
Can any company, natural person elect for the small business relief, or will the FTA inform them whether they are eligible?
Yes, election for small business relief is required to be made in the tax return for the relevant period. No application or intimation is required to or from the FTA as long as the revenue does not exceed 3 million dirhams. In case you elect for small business relief in your return, you can use the cash basis of accounting and no need to have a financial statement, but you must have a proof of revenue.
Another question. Will a free zone entity be required to register and file a CT return?
Yes, all free zone entities will be required to register and file a corporate tax return irrespective whether they are a qualifying free zone person or not.
What is the time limit to file a tax return?
A natural person that is a taxable person must file corporate tax return with the FTA no later than 9 months from the end of the relevant tax period. Natural persons should submit a single tax return for all their businesses and business activities subject to corporate tax.
The corporate tax return should be submitted by who?
As we've mentioned in this session, a tax return must be submitted by a taxable person or another person who has the right to do so on behalf of the taxable person, where this includes a tax agent or legal representative. And the parent company of the tax group is required to file a tax return on behalf of the tax group.
Can I correct my return and how?
Yes, if the correction is made before the due date, it is considered as an amendment. But if the correction is made after the due date, it must be submitted as a voluntary disclosure through Imara Tax.
Do we need a financial statement if elect a small business relief?
Thank you for this question, Hissa, where this is important to highlight that the taxpayer who elect for the small business relief do not need financial statements, but they must be able to prove the revenue and if FTAs request this. So you need to know that if you did not elect for small business relief, a financial statement must be prepared in terms of IFRS or IFRS for SMEs, where all taxable persons with revenue in excess of 50 million dirhams and qualifying free zone persons, irrespective of their revenue, must have audited financial statements, where the financial statement should be submitted by signed and stamped and attached to the return to accept it.
My company did operate zero revenue. Do I need to file return for CT?
This is some of the common question we're receiving. If your company did operate zero revenue, and do you need to file the corporate tax return? So the answer is if you have not earned any income in the tax period, you still need to file a return. So please make sure that you file your return irrespective of your revenue. You can elect for the small business relief and you will have a simplified return steps, or if you don't want to elect for the small business relief, you will need to complete the normal corporate tax return. Where amounts are nil, you need to populate nil in the relevant fields. So again, if you operate zero revenue, you still need to apply for the corporate tax return, where the steps will be simplified to you if entered the revenue.
Do profit and loss and balance sheet statements need to be generated from an accounting software, stamped and signed, if the company is a non-qualifying free zone LLC with no revenue but expenses only?
The profit and loss and balance sheet need to be signed and stamped and attached to the tax return. The amounts input in the tax return must match the amounts as per the financial statements. However, given that the company has no revenue, it may elect in its return for small business relief, in which case no tax is payable and financial statement need not to be attached to the return.
Thank you. Our sister company has no business and not transactions. It is its trade license expired and not renewed, and now we are under process of trade license cancellation. Can I process the deregistration of corporate tax now or after the completion of trade license cancellation?
Thank you, Hissa. The company needs to apply for deregistration within 3 months from the cessation of business or business activities. You need to attach the trade license cancellation to the deregistration application.
All financial statements need to be signed and stamped if the revenue is over 3 million dirhams. Is it imperative to get it audited by auditors? And if so, is it mandatory for them to be in the register of the auditors in the UAE?
As we've mentioned, only taxable persons with revenue above 50 million dirhams need audited financial statements. However, if the company is a qualifying free zone person, it also needs audited financial statement irrespective of the revenue amount. The auditor must be a registered auditor as well.
Thank you, Rhoda, for your time and for providing clear answers to the questions. And now we are reaching the end of this session. Thank you, everyone, for attending today's workshop. Please visit our official website and follow our social media to stay updated on our events and activities related to corporate tax. Thank you and have a lovely day.